Most systems don't collapse dramatically. They erode quietly. At first, nothing looks wrong. Reports are still submitted, meetings still happen, metrics still move. But something subtle shifts. The signal weakens, not because people stop caring, not because the structure disappeared, but because the system slowly stopped telling the truth about itself. There is a moment in every system's life when honesty becomes inconvenient, and that's when distortion begins. It rarely starts as deception. It starts as smoothing. A rough number becomes a rounded one. A delay becomes on track. A risk becomes manageable. Language softens. Data compresses. Concerns get translated into something more comfortable. No one announces this change, but gradually the information flowing upward becomes filtered. And filtered information feels stable, until it isn't. Here is the problem. Systems depend on accurate feedback loops, but feedback loops require friction. They require people willing to surface uncomfortable truths. They require space where dissent isn't punished. They require leaders who reward accuracy more than reassurance. When that environment disappears, the feedback changes. Not in volume, in honesty. Reports still arrive, updates still circulate, dashboards still glow. But the system is no longer seeing itself clearly. And when a system cannot see itself clearly, it cannot correct itself. This is where quiet drift begins. The structure remains intact. The meetings continue. The metrics move. But responsiveness fades. By the time the distortion becomes obvious, adaptation has already occurred. People have learned what gets rewarded. They have learned what gets ignored. They have learned which truths travel safely and which do not. So they adjust. Not out of malice, out of survival. This is why some organizations feel stable right before failure. Externally, everything appears orderly. Internally, the feedback loop has already broken. You can see this pattern everywhere. In businesses where customer complaints stop being escalated. In institutions where bad news travels slower than good news. In teams where people hesitate before speaking plainly. The absence of visible conflict can look like harmony, but often it is silence. And silence inside a system is rarely neutral. It means the feedback has thinned. When feedback thins, correction slows. When correction slows, drift accelerates. And drift does not feel like collapse. It feels like normal. That is what makes it dangerous. The system is not crashing, it is continuing, just slightly misaligned, then slightly more, then slightly more, until the gap between appearance and reality becomes too wide to ignore. Most systems don't fail from lack of effort. They fail from lack of timely truth. And timely truth depends on feedback that arrives while there is still room to change. Once feedback becomes filtered, softened, or delayed, the system begins operating on yesterday's reality. And yesterday's reality does not prepare you for tomorrow's consequences. The quiet danger is not chaos. It is delayed awareness. Because by the time the numbers finally reflect what has been happening, the behavior has already adapted. The incentives have already shifted. The correction is no longer small. It is structural. And structural correction is expensive. So the real question is never, is the system functioning? The better question is the system hearing the truth in time to adjust? Because once honesty becomes inconvenient, stability becomes temporary, and temporary stability always expires.